What's good, guys? Today in this video we're going to be talking about log, Vlog L, S-Log 2, S-Log 3. It's all pretty much the same profile. It's kind of hard to use, not really once you get used to it, but within this video I'm going to show you guys my entire workflow using the profile. Everything from shooting down to coloring, down to how you should expose the image. It's going to be super simple. This might be a fairly long video, so I'm going to leave a few timestamps up above. If you guys just want to skip to the portion that might potentially help you the best, feel free to, but also feel free to watch the entire video because you might learn some things that you didn't know about log. So yeah, man, let's get into it. So first and foremost, why would you want to use log? It's so many different picture profiles within your camera. Why in the world would you want to use log? It's super freaking flat. It has no color, it's gray. It's actually a few different reasons why you want to use log that would benefit your footage tremendously. Now, the main use for log footage is to maximize the dynamic range of the image that's coming out of your camera. If you guys have no idea what dynamic range is, basically, it's the range of tones between pure black and pure white within an image. Good dynamic range within a camera is gonna help you capture all of these tones. Bad dynamic range is basically gonna blow out the whites, or it's gonna completely crush the blacks until there's no information within those tones. So if you want a more cinematic image that has more tone range, use log. Simple, really simple definition of log and why you would want to use it. Now, the hardest thing to do with log is basically exposing for it when you're shooting it. If you screw up the exposure, man, the image is gonna have a lot of grain. And this is a problem that I see a lot of people have, and I always hear people message me and ask me, yo, why is my image so grainy? It's probably because you're not exposing your log image right. So the first thing that we're gonna go over is how to expose the log image. I have a few different tips that are gonna help you guys make this process way easier than it has to be. The first tip is to use the exposure meter on your camera. Now, every single camera when you're filming has a meter at the bottom of the screen. This meter has a couple different notches on it. It has a couple different numbers on it, typically just 1, 2, and then everything after that, it just puts up a plus sign next to it just to indicate that you're overexposed. This meter at the bottom is gonna help you a ton when exposing log footage. So the best way that I found to expose when using log footage, this is my own personal experimentation. Don't quote me on this being the best way to expose it, but when I do it, this eliminates a lot of the grain that comes with exposing it perfectly. When exposing for log, you want to overexpose by 2 complete stops. This is going to combat the noise that you're going to get when you go to pull out the tones within the image. It's going to make it a lot better of a grade if you overexpose by 2 notches. So this is when this meter at the bottom of the screen is going to come in handy. When you're exposing your image using log, you could just look at this and make sure your exposure on that meter is at 2. You see yourself at 2, you should be good. Just pay attention to the meter at the bottom of the screen, make sure it's on 2, and you're overexposed by 2 stops. The next tip to help you guys easily expose your image when using log is to use the assist features within the cameras. Now, I use Panasonic. It's also a feature like this within Sony. I've used it before, and I believe it's also a feature like this within Canon cinema cameras. I haven't actually used one, so don't quote me on it, but I'm sure there is. So within the Panasonic, I believe it's called Vlog L Assist. And what this does is it allows you to have a Rec 709 readout of the image while you're filming it. And then when you go to get the file off the memory card, it is a Vlog L file. So essentially while you're filming, you're viewing the footage with the LUT on it that has contrast already put within it. And it's just easier for you to see what the image is gonna look like after you go in and do the color correction. So this is a really simple feature that's gonna help you guys expose your image. I'll show you really quick how to set it up on your GH5. And if you're on Sony, just go to the menu system and look up Gamma Assist. I believe this is what it's called. You turn on Gamma Assist within your camera, you should be straight. It's gonna give you a really nice readout of what the image would look like contrasted and saturated. You won't have this really dark gray looking image on your screen that you have no idea how to expose. So what you guys are gonna wanna do to enable the Vlog L Assist on your GH5 to have the Rec 709 overlay on the footage while filming log, go straight into the menu, go up to the top, and we're gonna go down to the second page, and you can see right here it says Vlog L View Assist. Now, you are not gonna see this feature able to be enabled unless you are on the Vlog L profile. So make sure you're on this profile before you go to the assist. Now, when you click on this, you're gonna have the option to select the LUT. I have a few different LUTs that I personally inputted myself within this. I'm not gonna show you guys and tell you guys how to do that within this video, but if you search on YouTube, I'm sure there's tons of videos to do this feature. But within the camera, you should see the Vlog L _709 LUT. Click on that and turn on the LUT monitor display to on. Now, you guys are not seeing it obviously on the screen, but when you enable it on your camera, you will see it. The next tip that's gonna help you guys tremendously expose your log image is to use zebras. Zebras is a feature within the camera that tells you when the highlights are blown or the information within the highlights are gone. So like I said, when you're using log, the whole reason that you want to even use log is to retain the information within the tones. So if you're using zebras, zebras is going to tell you when the highlights are too blown out. So a lot of the times when I'm filming and I use zebras, what I'll do is I'll boost the exposure within the camera way up until I see the portions and the highlights start to clip. Then from there, I'll just dial them back down until I know for a fact that I still have the information within those highlights. You do this, you make sure your exposure is at a 2, and you also look at the assist feature within the camera. You're gonna have a perfect exposure when you're filming log every single time. It's gonna make it super easy. Really quick, I'll show you guys how to set up zebras within the GH5. If you're on Sony, just hit your settings, man, and look for zebras, turn it on. When you're exposing your image, you're gonna see a pattern within the highlights, if they're clipped, that looks like zebra lines. Then you will know for a fact the information within those tones is gone. Just dial it back until you know for a fact that you still have the information within the highlights. So to set up zebras on our GH5, we're just gonna go straight into the menu system, go over to this left side, go down to this third option, and we're gonna open up the monitor display. And as you guys can see, we have an option right here that says zebra pattern. Click on this, and I use zebra too. It really doesn't matter because you have the option to set the different percentage. I have my percentages set to 80, and it's up to you to really sit and experiment with this. 80 is the most pinpoint accurate in terms of showing you what is overexposed within the shot. Now, if you want to be notified when you're not necessarily blowing something out, but when something is on the verge of getting blown out a lot faster, what you can do is lower that percentage value down. Like I said, 80 is pinpoint accurate for me, and I like to use 80. 80's fine. So, you know, you can set it 80%, and yeah, you're good to go. Just turn it on. And to show you guys what zebras looks like, I'm just gonna blow this exposure way out. And you can see over here on this left side, you have the different zebra patterns that are engulfing the image and letting you know what portions of the image is overexposed. So use zebras, use the other two options. Your exposure should be pinpoint accurate when using log. Now that you guys have a really good understanding of how to expose the log image, let's dive straight over to the computer. I'm gonna give you guys a really brief tutorial, or I guess overlook, of how I tend to color down my footage, color correct it, and color grade. I'm gonna be using Final Cut Pro 10 for this, but if you use Premiere, it's pretty much the same thing. Just apply the exact same tactics that I'm using when coloring down the footage. I'm gonna be using a plugin for Final Cut Pro 10 called Color Finale. But like I said, a lot of these features that I'm gonna be utilizing within this workflow, you can utilize within Lumetri. It's all pretty much the same stuff. I'm not gonna be doing any super extensive color grading within this. Let's get straight into it though. This clip right here is something that I filmed on my GH5 over the weekend. It's just a really simple shot of me going in on the Ronin S. It's gonna be within the review. I'm just rambling at this point, but you can see it's a really flat image. And I shot this using Vlog on the GH5. And yeah, I mean, it's a pretty flat image, but it looks good. It has all the tones within it. You can see it's no overexposure going on in the highlights, in the sky, and everything on the ground is here. So this is gonna be a perfect image for us to demonstrate this on. So first, let's just drag Color Finale on here. And I'm gonna change my workspace up here at the top to color. And the reason why I wanna do this is I wanna utilize these graphs over here. So we have waveforms, we have vector scopes. It's just a really detailed place that I need for this color grading overview. So if you guys have no idea what vector scopes are or how to read vector scopes, not vector scopes, I'm sorry, waveforms, my bad. This is waveform right here. So 0 right here on this graph means it's pure black. Anything below this is gonna signify to you that the information is all the way gone within the dark tones. And 100 is gonna signify pure white. Anything over this is gonna signify to you that that tone is completely blown out and there's no information within the highlights or the whites. So this is gonna be a good thing for us to look at because we want to make sure that we're not crushing out all the blacks and we're not, you know, blowing out all the highlights. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this is that this is all subjective, you know. This is just here to make sure that you don't delete any information that you will want to keep. At the end of the day, a look is dialed in by eye, so pay attention to this, but not too much to this. You're gonna dial in a look that you wanna dial in. So really simply, we're just gonna go in and do some really quick color correction. It's just gonna get our tones to where we want them to be. So lift, gamma, gain, this is similar to shadow, midtones, highlights. Like I said, if you're using Lumetri, use that information right there to help yourself. So I'm gonna drop down the shadows, and I'm looking at the vector scopes just to make sure that we don't completely ruin these and take these all the way out. You can see if we go down all the way over here within this left side, under 0 means that those tones are just gone. So we're just gonna drag them close. I don't like to go super contrasty with a lot of my looks anyways. I'm just gonna put it right there. We're not gonna go super crazy. And with the sky, we're just gonna come up. I don't want my sky super close to white because this is a sunset, so I wanna keep a sunsetish look. I'm gonna bring the midtones down because I want this to be more of a low-key look. Bring the shadows and just play with this as much as you like. This isn't something that I'm gonna go super in detail with, but play with this just as much as you like. I'm gonna up the saturation to get the colors in. This looks good right here for me. And yeah, this is a simple shadow midtone highlight adjustment. Now I'm gonna bring in some curves, and I'm gonna use the S curve to accentuate the contrast within the shot. So if you guys have no idea how to use curves, a simple breakdown of this is this point right here over here on the left side signifies the shadows. This point over here on the right side of the graph signifies the highlights. So I'm just gonna create a simple S curve, and it's just gonna bring our contrast out a little bit in the shot. Bring that down and bring the highlights up just to increase the contrast within the shot. If you look over here at the graph, you can see it's just stretching out the middle portions of it. And I'm gonna bring this point right here up just a little bit to put a little bit of a fade within the shot, just to give it a little bit of a filmic look, I guess. I'm gonna go back to the color wheels and bring down the saturation in the shot. And I think that this is good. Now, the next thing that I'm gonna do is get more into a color grading or a visually aesthetic look for this. So you can see that this is contrasted and saturated, and it looks like normal. It looks like a Rec 709 shot. So I'm gonna apply kind of like a teal and orange gray to this, and I'm gonna go like super like orange on the midtones and the highlights, just because this is a sunset-ish shot. So first I'm gonna start off in the midtones and get those to like a warmer tone. And you can just move this. I'm not really gonna utilize this because I have color finale and I have the option to just manually adjust the sliders. So I'm just gonna reset these to 0. And we're gonna take some of the blues out. In the midtones, take some of the greens out to give it more of a purplish tone. Take some of the reds out as well. Increase the reds a little bit. And for the whites, I'm going to also add a little bit of an orange tone within those as well. And if we go back to the curves, we have the color curves as well. So I'm gonna use this to add in a little bit of blues within the shadows. You can do the same type of stuff on Lumetri as well. So if I take the red one and drag it down a little bit, it's gonna introduce a little bit of blue within the shot and the shadows. Looks decent, not super tealish. I'm gonna drag it down a little bit more, and I'm gonna bring this back down just to keep those tones right there the same. And I'm gonna go back to my midtones, and I'm gonna introduce a little bit more of a warm tone into this. And I think that looks cool. Next thing that I'm gonna add to this is vectors. Now, this is something that Lumetri doesn't necessarily have, but within Lumetri, you can use the secondaries adjustments within it to adjust different colors, and you could also use the hue curves as well to take saturation away from certain tones within shots that you don't necessarily want. So within this shot right here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the yellows, and I'm gonna adjust the hue on the yellow a little bit towards an oranger tone, just to give us that really sunsetish look. Another thing that I'm gonna do is screw around with the luminosity a little bit. If we drag this down, you can see it's making our oranges a little bit deeper, which is what I want because I'm trying to replicate more of a sunsetish look. Another thing that I'm gonna do is go to our blues, and I'm going to adjust the hues for this as well. For my liking, I like to increase the hue just a little bit. I'm also gonna bring down the luminosity for this. We'll go to the teal just to screw around with this as well. And I'm gonna bring this more back towards this side, drop the luminosity on this as well. And this is all pretty much subjective at this point. We can also go to the hue of the green. This is a very green shot. I want it to be more of a warmer tone, so I'm definitely gonna adjust the hue for this. And I'm just gonna move this more towards the warmer side of things, which is up this way. And from here on out, this is just really you plugging and playing and doing what you wanna do to the shot. So this is a really simple color grade. To make this a little bit more stylistic, I'll probably up the fade on it just a little bit, bring the midtones back down, and just to get it to more of a stylized look. Not too faded, but not too unfaded. So this would be like a finished color grade for me. I'll probably end up taking down these greens a lot as well, just because I don't personally like green that much. But again, this is all subjective. So you do what you do, you mess around with it. And this is what a color graded sunset look for me would look using gray. You can see it looks really well. We still have definition down here in our shadows, and also within the highlights in the sky, we have every single tone in there as well. It's nothing blown out, and it just looks amazing. If we were to use a standard profile for this, we would have had either definition in the shadows and the sky blown out, or we would have had definition within the sky and the shadows completely clipped. So yeah, man, this is cool. I love log. But let's wrap this up, man. Let's wrap this up. And there it is, man. I hope you guys have a better understanding of how to use log. I hope it's not as intimidating as it once was, because for me, I was screwing up on log a lot, and I just didn't even want to use it anymore. But I stayed at it, and I hope that this encourages you guys to do the same. If you guys have any other questions, leave them down in the comments. If you guys enjoyed this video, man, also let me know down in the comments as well. Drop this a like. Go ahead and share this, man, and subscribe if you're new here. Peace out. I'm gonna check y'all out on my next video.